Hey everyone, Rob Van Dyson here again. Today is the 15th of August, 2021, and it's a Sunday, and I went to church. I know, gasp, I actually went to church. I've actually been going since I've come down here. And one of the speakers today gave a quote, and the rest of the meeting, honestly, I couldn't tell you anything about it just because I was dwelling on this quote so much. And obviously it was given in a religious context, but I think this quote applies to most of life, actually. And it was by J. Golden Kimball. And the quote, roughly, I don't have it right here in front of me, but I actually wrote it down on my phone. And it goes to the effect of, I might not always walk the straight and narrow, but I sure as hell try and cross it as often as I can. And in a religious context, it's talking about how, as the scripture says, that the way to heaven, the path is narrow and straight, essentially. And that any little deviation will take you off that path. And it's one of those things that if you go back to, basic geometry, that if you have a pathway in front of you, and you start right off in the center of that path, and you have a 1 degree variation, so you're not heading straight down that path, but you're off by just 1 degree, given the fact that you have enough space for this to actually take effect, as you walk down that path, just 1 degree off, that you will soon find yourself off the path. And if the more narrow the path is, the quicker you will find yourself off the path. Now, we're all mortal. We all have our own follies and that kind of stuff. But even with things like autopilots and aircraft, I've heard airline pilots who fly a lot via autopilot, and they'll chart in a course into the autopilot. And even with that computer precision, they'll find themselves off of the projected flight path, and they have to correct for it. I am sure as technology has gotten better, that the planes are able to correct, the computer systems are able to correct more automatically, but the fact is that, as I heard one airline pilot say, our main job during a flight is to make sure we're on our flight path and to correct when we're off. Now, in life, if you think about it, in a lot of ways, flying an airplane is as obstacle-free and has as little chance for interference as possible. You are still working in the real world here. You're not working in some hypothetical world. So there are things that will cause you to go off the path. But in our own lives, our metaphorical path has a lot of different things that will take us off, a lot of different distractions that will take us off, and things of that nature. And obviously the ideal would be for us to stay on our path. Now, once again, this is talking mostly in a religious standpoint of, living the doctrine, living what we're actually taught. But the fact is that very few of us can actually walk that tightrope that is the ideal. very few of us will actually walk down whatever path we set for ourselves, whether it be religious, whether it be with our financial goals, whether it be with our desires to be good parents, good sons, good daughters, good whatever. You know, we've all seen cases where something has drawn us off the path, whether it's life circumstances, whether it's our own bad habits, things like that. We've been pulled off the path. We've wandered off the path. Now, when we are off the path, we have essentially two broad choices. One is, because we're always going to be moving forward, time as we understand it, or at least as we practically understand it, is linear. You're always moving forward. 1 second follows the next second. Yeah, it's raining out here, and we've been having a lot of lightning and thunder. I actually thought about recording inside the house, but it's very echoey inside the house right now, so I figured out here, even with the thunder and lightning and the rain, which I'm sure you can hear, that this would be a better sound environment than inside the house. And some of you might actually find it soothing, like when I was up at Hobble Creek and you could hear the creek behind me. But going back to my original statement, is when we find ourselves off the path, for whatever reason, things within our control, things outside of our control, we essentially have two different options. We can say, I'm off the path anyway, it's hopeless, I'm just going to continue wandering however the path takes me, wherever my feet take me. And just keep on wandering, getting further and further away from the path. That 1 degree might take us off of that first step by a millimeter, or something even smaller. Hundreds or thousands of an inch. But after miles, we might find where we can't even look and see the path, where we are literally miles off the path. Or we can say, you know what, I'm off the path. I'm going to go ahead and head back towards the path. And I'm going to get back on that path as much as I can. And sometimes we overcorrect. And we end up crossing the path in a zigzag pattern. And while no one is going to argue that that is the ideal is you stay on the path, you stay on your target. But even a zigzag pattern, far from ideal, will get us closer to our goal than if we just decide to wander off and just let our feet take us where it may. And the sooner we realize that we are off the path, and unfortunately, if you think of a narrow pathway, whether it be a narrow sidewalk, whether it be a narrow trail on a mountain or whatever the case may be, there's a lot of visual cues. When you're planning on walking on hard-packed earth, is the way I tend to think of it. And all of a sudden, you start noticing that, your first step off into the grass and the brush, you usually will notice, I'm off. And sometimes it's like that in real life. You can say, okay, I'm starting to get off the path. I'm starting to not be where I want to be headed. I'm not taking the most direct route. And the correction is easy. Other times, especially with life, where the path is more of an ideal in our head, we can find ourselves miles, like I was saying, from the path before we even realize that we've left the path. And so then we have to try and figure out where the path is and what is the best way for us to get back on that path, all while continuously moving forward. life does not stop. Time does not stop for us. And so, how do we get back on the path? Well, that depends on what path we're talking about and what situations you found yourself in. But in most cases, you can stop and say, okay, well, you can't stop, but you can orientate yourself while you're moving and correct and head back towards the path. Other times, it's a little harder. The terrain is difficult. And so you have to navigate through that terrain to get yourself back on the path. Things like addiction. I could see in my mind where, getting back on the path may not be as easy as just, turning and walking back towards the path on a nice, flat, even plane until you find your path again. And sometimes with life, whether it just be tall grass that obscures the path, or whether it be mountain ranges and forests, that seem, the metaphorical terrain, makes it seem like it's very, very difficult. Sometimes it feels like you are in a gully, and you know that the path is up there, up this extremely steep rise, maybe even a cliff. And it seems very, very easy to give up on the path. Sometimes it seems like it would even be better just to go looking for a new path. And outside of the religious, sometimes it is. But that needs to be a conscious decision. And in most cases, in my experience, it is better to figure out where the path is and do whatever it is necessary to get back on the path. To climb the grade wherever possible, to get closer and closer to the path until you're on it. And invariably, you'll stay on the path for a little bit, and then you'll find yourself wandering off again. It's life. We're humans. It's something that happens. But as humans, we have the ability to realize that we are off the path that we want to be on, and to start working our way back. And as long as we keep moving on that path, as long as we keep crossing that path, as long as, even if we're zigzagging over the path, no matter how many times we wander off, if we can get ourselves back on the path, we're going to be closer to our goal. And that's really all we can hope for. Perfection is an ideal that we can never reach. But it is valuable in that it gives us a measuring stick to say, how close can I get to perfection? How much better can I be as a person, in whatever field we're talking about? To be, how close to perfection can I make myself? Knowing full well we will never be perfect, and without letting that discourage us, but instead the goal be, okay, I can't be perfect, but how close to perfect can I be? Some of us end up taking almost like a 90-degree turn off the path at times, where we find ourselves walking completely off the path, sometimes by choice, especially when it comes to things like religion, when it comes to our goals, where we just kind of give up, throw up our hands, and say, you know what, that shiny object over there looks a heck of a lot more interesting than this boring path. And let's be honest, most of the paths that we're going to walk that are actually getting us towards a goal aren't easy paths. Sometimes they're even boring paths. And it's very easy to get distracted and very easy to wander off. Sometimes we even say things it's like, you know what, I'm going to step off the path for a little bit. I can always find my way back. Which is a very dangerous mindset to have. Because you go and you find yourself with finding that shiny little object. And then you see another shiny little object. And you see another little shiny little object. And you just keep wandering around thinking, I can always get back to the path. I can always get back on the path heading towards my goals, whatever they may be. And then we find that so much of our time has been wasted going after shiny objects. Oftentimes, those objects are fool's gold and actually provide no actual worth to our lives. Yet we let those things drag us off. I know I have my shiny little objects. There are things I know that I need to quit doing that I don't want to quit doing. I know that I have habits that I know are holding me back. Things that, hey look, shiny object, that I know have absolutely no value. And in fact, have a negative value that actually take away from my life. That I have a hard time giving up because that immediate gratification is so strong that it's difficult to give them up. Especially in some cases, that shiny little object, is so easy to get to and gives so much instant gratification. And the next shiny little object is only 5 steps away. Sometimes even 1 step. And you find yourself with this collection of shiny little objects of various forms that keep leading you further and further away from the path. There's a lot of metaphor in there, and you can draw that to a lot of different things. Like I said, the original quote was given in the context of religion. And, trying to be on that straight and narrow path. Straight is the path and narrow is the gate. But it applies to so much, whether it's I'm trying to save up, I'm trying to get out of debt, whatever the case, talking about the financial. But here's just this one little thing. If I get this one thing, it'll make my life easier. Or it'll make my life more enjoyable. But it's taking you off of that path that you're trying to get to. That thing isn't necessary. It's a shiny little object, just a little bit off the path. Anyways, those are my thoughts. And I hope you guys can find value. And the nice thing about a principle like this is that it can be applied to pretty much all of life. It doesn't have to be strictly religious. It can apply to temporal things just as easily. It applies to goals perfectly. With that, I want to encourage you to figure out what your dreams are. Figure out what you need to do to get to your dreams. Do the work and stay on the path. With that, goodbye for now.